Jazz, where I'm Dr. Jazz and we journey to purpose together. Today I have with me Pavielle Bookman. How are you?
I'm great, girl. I had a snack, so I'm ready to go.
Good. So I'm going to introduce her really quickly, and as usual, we're going to dive right in. So Pavielle is a native of Jacksonville, Florida. She graduated with a Bachelor's of Science in Business from Florida State University and received her Juris Doctorate degree from Stetson. Thank you. Stetson University College of Law. That means she's a lawyer, y'all. Pavielle is a lawyer, strategist, and coach who serves people of faith by demystifying the topic of purpose to help you become more confident and fulfilled in your life. She hosts a Purpose Collective podcast where she talks about what living a life of purpose is really about. Each week on her podcast, she discusses insight and tips to help you live out your life on purpose on a higher frequency, just as God intended. Okay, well, thank you for being here with us.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here with you. It's fun to get to do this in person. It's my first time.
Oh, really? So people are like, you doing it in person? I'm like, yeah, I trust the people that I ask.
You know what's funny? I just got a COVID test.
Okay,
so
good.
We're good to go. I mean, for what that's worth.
Yeah, there's a lot of false positives. I actually got a text message this morning, funny thing, that says your COVID test may come back negative, but you still might have, like they've been getting like those statewide like text messages.
Yeah, that's not that it's a false negative. It's just that it takes a while for the virus to become detectable in the body, is what it is. So the negative is kind of true in the sense that the body hasn't like
registered.
Yeah, that we need to be fighting. That's all. The antibodies haven't kicked in yet. So that's why you can test negative for COVID one day and still be transmitting COVID
to everybody. Yeah. I was just like, okay, thank you, government, for letting me know that. Yeah. But anyway, so as we do normally, we're going to dive right in. So my first question for you is, what does purpose mean to you?
Oh, purpose is everything to me. It's everything, because what it has done for me is given my life meaning and fulfillment, right? So my career path, being a lawyer, is something that I knew I was going to do since I was 5. And my grandmother's baby sister, she's in her 80s. She tells my dad all the time, Pavielle would tell me when she was 5 years old she was going to be a lawyer. And I knew that I was being called to be a lawyer and to practice law because 1, I love the law, and 2, I love helping people. And I had recognized that the law is a tool that's used to help people. You know, the only reason why we're able to go to the schools that we want to go to is because lawyers litigated in court about the fact that separate but equal was not equal at all. Right. And then we got Brown versus the Board of Education. So I'm kind of like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. Yeah. But there was still something lacking in my life. And once I figured out my purpose, it just gave me so much meaning and fulfillment to be able to operate on a level where I'm partnering with God in the work that He's doing here in the earth. So that's what purpose really means to me.
Okay, so it sounds like you knew your career from young, but maybe not your purpose.
No, I had no idea.
Okay, cool.
No idea. I wasn't even focused on purpose. Nobody had said anything about any purpose to me.
Yeah.
No, I didn't know.
Purpose is a new agey word that I think like our generation is now like, what is, like, I feel like if I asked my aunt who's like a baby boomer what her purpose is, she'd be like, I do this. You know?
You think so?
I think so.
You know what? It's probably because they are more focused on operating in it instead of trying to define it.
Okay, how so?
So the older generation, I feel like they do a really good job, a lot of them, at working and operating in their purpose. They know what they're good at. They'll stick with it for forever.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Career or not. You know, if somebody's good at painting, they'll do that whether they're getting paid for it or not. They understand what the importance of painting is. They understand the effect that it has on their customers or clients or whatever. They don't necessarily get bogged down in trying to figure out why it is that they like to paint.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, they don't need to define what that is for them.
Yeah. So
that's why I feel like they probably aren't focused on it. It's because they're not focused on defining it. Whereas we are very much so the generation where we like to put labels on things. We like to classify things. We like to know what we're doing, and we're a little bit more intentional about why we do the things that we do. So I think that that's why. Because I mean, purpose in and of itself, like it's in the Bible. It's been there for thousands of years. So it in and of itself isn't new. But I agree with you in the fact that we are way more focused on it.
Yeah, and what that means for us. So my next question is more broad. Is can you tell us about your journey? So you knew you were supposed to be a lawyer at 5, but you didn't discover your purpose so much later. So what did that journey look like for you?
I stumbled upon it.
Okay.
I completely stumbled upon it. And I hope I can do the story justice in condensing it. So what happened is I was, I guess you can say, nominated to serve as the chair of a committee. The committee was geared towards diversity, equity, and inclusion for an organization that is comprised of mostly white women. And I wasn't having it. I thought, no, I don't want to do that. But before I gave them a formal no, I voiced in my mind the fact that I don't want to do it because, one, I'm not an expert in diversity, equity, and inclusion. I'm a Black woman. I don't know how to tell you to care about issues that are related to DE&I. Number 2, it's a topic, so it spawned last summer, which was right around the time that Ahmaud Arbery was murdered in the street. He had just been assassinated. Well, no, we were just becoming aware of the fact that he had been murdered in the street, and George Floyd had just been murdered in the street. So I wasn't in the mood to deal with any resistance in the area of trying to explain diversity, equity, and inclusion. So that was my reasoning. I was like, I'm not doing that. But then I said, you know what? Too many people were in that chat saying my name, and some of them didn't even know me. You know, like, you've never seen me a day in your life. You don't know if I'm able to lead this committee or not. So I said, you know what, let me pray about it. So I prayed about it. And then I read my Bible shortly after that. And when I say I read my Bible, what I literally mean is, like, I just picked up where I left off. Like, I didn't go to any particular scripture or anything, but I'm reading my Bible. I think it was 1 Timothy or 2 Timothy. It was in one of the Timothys. And it said, you need to, it was like something around, it's your responsibility to teach those who don't know. And I was just like, what? And you know, and it went even deeper and talked about, like, even if they resist you, they don't know, but you know. You know, like, you understand. So teach them, and then they will get an understanding. I'm like, oh gosh. All right, cool. So a couple of days later, I'm hanging out with my girlfriend, and she goes, do you know what your purpose is? And I said, yeah, girl. My purpose, yeah, I know. Do you? And she goes, no. So I said, oh my goodness, here's how you can find out. So I gave her a game plan, and then I feel like God was like, this girl think her life's purpose is to do this diversity, equity, and inclusion thing. Let me hurry up and let her figure it out. You know, because I literally was like, yes, this is it. But I was wrong. It was an assignment that God was calling me to do, but it wasn't my purpose. You know, so what was next? Oh, I got an email from the Budgetnista, and she was saying someone was hosting a webinar to teach you how to craft your unique story into a signature offer. And so I said, ooh, let me watch this, because I can use the information to craft my unique story as a marketing tool for my business. I had a contract review business called the Advice Council. So I was reviewing lease agreements and stuff like that for people. And I'm like, all right, cool. I can use this information. Girl, I watched that video. I got so hyped. I'm like, oh my goodness, I can absolutely have a signature offer to help people discover their purpose. It was important for me. It was important for my friend. I know it's important for other people. I didn't fully understand why I had such like an unction to do it. You know, like, this was me. This is the Holy Spirit doing like a download, because immediately he literally gave me everything to craft this signature offer. And I'm like, but wait a minute. I'm supposed to be watching this to learn how to do marketing for my business.
That is your business. Well, you didn't know that.
No, I didn't have a podcast and none of that stuff. That was nowhere on my radar. My business was the contract business. So I'm like, why didn't I think, what is going on here? And why did purpose come up? So I said, you know what? There's something here.
Mm-hmm.
And before I invest thousands of dollars for somebody to teach me how to do this signature offer, let me explore this more. Let me see what God is trying to tell me here. So in a nutshell, I went and prayed about it. I opened my devotional that night because I had just made the decision to start rereading my devotional, my morning devotional at night.
Mm-hmm.
And I kid you not, I was like, okay, I'm just gonna read the parts that I underlined because that's what I want to focus on. Girl, very first line, you were created on purpose for a purpose.
Yeah.
And I knew it. I was like, oh my goodness, this is it. I was so wrong.
Yeah.
I was so wrong. So I started praying specifically about that, and God was just leading me down the rabbit hole. And I'm like, are you sure?
Yeah.
Are you sure? And so that's how I discovered my purpose. I stumbled upon it.
Yeah. So there's this thing that I cultivated that people probably will hear as they continue to listen to the podcast, where you have like the big bang, where people know from like 3 or 4, like, this is what I was supposed to do, this is what I was created to do, and they go out and do that thing, and you're like, of course, you're Beyonce, you've been singing since you were 10, right? You know?
Right.
But then, y'all, I'm sorry, I got one hand painting, the other one no, I just realized that they probably can see my nails. But anyway, and if you're listening, one hand's painting, one hand's not, it's okay.
It's okay.
Life happens to all of us. But then there's this thing where I call, like, you slide into it.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, and I feel like most people do. And I like to point that out in people's stories because both are important and both matter, but it just depends on who you are and how you decide to slide into it. So for some people, that's noticing the patterns of their lives, and some people it happens like over a week, a day.
Well, it was weeks.
And
then I started noticing the patterns. So I'm thinking, okay, God, you're telling me that I'm supposed to strategically guide people towards their purpose. And what really was was like the initial part where I started thinking about it is I made a post on my Instagram about what's your purpose, and I laid out a game plan for how to start the steps to discovering your purpose. Girl, why did somebody comment and said, "Ooh, I love this. This is so good. Your purpose looks so good on you." I'm like, this ain't my purpose.
Yeah.
You know, because at the time, I'm like, diversity, equity,
yeah.
and I'm like, this ain't my purpose. And so that's when the wheels really started to turn. I'm like, is it good?
Yeah.
You know, and so it was over the course of weeks. He had to really hit me over the head with the messaging because I just couldn't understand it. And then when I really sat back and looked at it, I said, oh my gosh, you really want me to strategize and help people figure out their purpose. Yeah. And I've been literally doing this my whole life. People call me when they're at a crossroads. Like people, and I'm like, I don't know. You know, in my mind, I'm like, why they call me? But of course, I have the next step.
Yeah.
I always have the next best step for you. And I'm able to break it down in ways that people understand it. So I realized that my ability to be an excellent problem solver, my ability to have a way to think analytically and devise a plan from it. And not just one, I can come up with multiple ways to get to the end goal, is really so that I can help the kingdom in that purpose.
Yeah. So my question based on that is, when you were in those weeks of figuring out, can you tell us, like, what did that feel like to be like, is it, maybe, I don't know, like, were you fighting yourself, or was there a level of acceptance?
So I am I'm a person who really likes to just know. Okay. So I would say that for somebody who likes to just know things and to know every single step in the process, I yielded and I was fine with it. I yielded and I was fine with it. I was loving the journey. I was loving the back and forth with God. I was really, really excited about the fact that I was hearing directly from Him. So I was fine. I was very excited about the possibility of doing because He gave me end goal, but I'm like, how am I supposed to get there?
Right.
You know, like what am I supposed to be doing? So that part would normally make me feel anxious, and I was fine. I'm like, all right. So because at that point, when He tells you to do something, He gives you the tools that you need.
Right. That's So was there like a piece though? Because I know there are other things that you're in your life. So like the diversity, equity, and inclusion, right? The DEI, right? Was there like, tell us about the difference of the feelings. Because I feel like people need to know. Like when you're in your purpose, you feel it. You know, like you just know.
With DEI, I enjoy it, right? I really like working with my team. I feel I'm confident. I know that I was the best person to do it because the committee didn't exist. And if you want somebody to start something from the ground up, you need someone who is committed to being meticulous, who's in the weeds, who's going to create metrics for you. It was me. It was me. But I don't feel a sense of fulfillment by doing it. I know the work is important. I enjoy it. And God has provided. I mean, there's been a lot of provision in it. Anything that we needed as a committee, somebody on the committee can do. So even though none of us have any experience in DE&I, we all have tools that can be transferred to help, right? But man, when God told me about purpose and he started lining the things up that I do, because like my podcast is an extension of my purpose. It's helping people with their purpose. I just feel so empowered. I feel a level of influence over helping people. People respond to the material in a different way. I just see lives being changed.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that I tell people when I'm helping them discover their purpose, whether they believe in a spirit or God or not, is that if you're not impacting someone else, then you're not, for me, you're not operating in your purpose. And people are always like, well, what about the people that like save whales? And I'm like, yeah, but there's a part of us that needs to appreciate the whale. Right? Like, so like them saving the whale actually helps us because we get to appreciate something that God created. So yeah, I think that's important. Like you seeing that your purpose impacts other people is really important on your journey to your purpose.
Oh, for sure. For sure. I've seen listeners to the podcast, I've seen their trajectory completely change. Like one listener, she's got a real estate license. So she's now a realtor. You know, like she was a baker before. So her career path completely changed. Another listener and someone who subscribes to my newsletter, because I had a newsletter first. I was like, okay, how can I communicate with people? Email. So I had my newsletter before I had anything. And one subscriber to my newsletter, she is now operating her own dance company. She's teaching little girls ballet, and she has been groomed for this since she was 3. Because that's when she started dancing, and her mom had told her, she's like, yeah, you'll teach girls one day. And my girlfriend is like, I'm a lawyer, you know, right? I litigate. And child, she now owns her own dance company. And it's great to see them meaning like the people who subscribe to my newsletter or who listen to my podcast start to discover their own purpose, because they now get to feel what I'm talking about. And so she had customers before she ever had a business. You know, like people were blowing her up. Can you teach? And she hadn't even started teaching. And it was just good, like to see lives impacted, because her life is being impacted, but the girls who she's teaching, like their lives are being impacted. They're learning confidence. They're learning how to conduct themselves, how to control their little bodies. It's so cool to see.
And one of the things that you said was like she had customers before she even started. So let's talk about you had customers before you even started, right? People came to you and they asked you all these questions. So let's talk about that journey of like, oh wait, these are my people. Like, how did you gather your people to organize it?
So the email list started gathering my people. I just sent an email to 10 people, a little more, but the goal was no less than 10 people, to let them know that I was considering doing something around purpose. I wanted to create an email list to help people with their purpose. I didn't know what it was going to look like, right? I don't know the details. Don't ask me no questions. And that's how I started to build a tribe, and I started a Facebook group. And so I just started inviting random people. The Holy Spirit said invite them, I invite them. I haven't talked to them in 10 years. It's okay. God said invite them, so I invited them, you know? So that's how I was able to also find my people. And then once I had the podcast, girl, they found me.
Yeah.
I don't know how, but they started to find me, and they'll hit me up and they'll slide in my DMs on Instagram, or they'll send me an email, and it kind of just formed around me. But yeah, and then when I started telling people, not a lot, I maybe told 3 people about the signature offer that I was going to launch, they're trying to give me their money.
Yeah, that's good.
Like, I can take it, it's fine. I can take it and put it over here. But I would much rather have systems in place to be able to accept it and give you your login to whatever I'm trying to give you. That's behind a password and protected, so that people who pay for it can get it. But yeah, that girl, I found it's a combination of I found them on Facebook, email, and then they kind of found me.
So it sounds like you were not afraid to put yourself out there.
No, I should have been.
Why? Wait, why?
Yeah, girl, because this was so far outside of my comfort zone. I'm an introvert, so I like being by myself or being in small groups. That's my preferred method. It's really hard to get me out of the house. When you get me out of the house, I'm like a social butterfly, so that's why people are really shocked when they find out I'm an introvert. But I would have much rather just made my money in my career and hung out, did my community service, hung out with my sorority sisters at sorority meeting and did service with them. And girl, I would have much rather just done all of that, because it doesn't require me to be in the forefront like it does when you have a podcast. You really subject yourself to praise and criticism and attention, and I'm just not somebody who really likes attention.
Which is so interesting, but I get it because I'm the same way. I don't like, I feel like I'm always put like in the forefront, but I'm always like, no, like I'm good, like I'm better. I get that.
I'm great, like I'm a solid number 1, right? But I'm an excellent number 2.
I get it.
I'm an excellent support system for somebody. You need me to do what? Oh, I got you. You don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, I get that. So, what in you made you say, you know what, this makes me uncomfortable, but I'm still going to do it? Because I think when we journey towards our purpose, for people listening, there will be moments where you're like, this makes me very uncomfortable, but I know that in order to build my podcast, I have to do it.
Because it wasn't about me. It wasn't about me. I have knowledge that people need, and so I have to share it. And it's funny because I personally think that I'm a much better written communicator than I am an oral communicator. So I would have much rather had a blog, quite frankly. But I just know that the people who were going to really need and want to digest the material and the content that I created, we're going to need a more accessible way to do it. And not everybody has time to read a 10-minute blog, but you can sure pop those earbuds in your ear when you're working out and listen to a podcast. Or when you're driving, you can listen during your commute. So it just wasn't about me. I had to, I understand the importance of purpose. So it wasn't going to stop anything. There are things that people are saying that is going to spawn off of what I'm doing, and I want to say no so bad because it's so far outside of my comfort zone. But if there's a demand for it, then Jazz, I gotta do it.
Yeah, that's good. So when you say you understand the importance of purpose, what is the importance of purpose for us looking?
So besides all of the benefits that you get internally, the importance has to do with the external part of it. So there are, for one, God made us to be interdependent upon each other, right? So we're made to fit all together like this. So my skills, your skills, her skills, his skills, they're all meant to work cohesively, and we move as a unit to make the kingdom be what it's supposed to be. So purpose is what we use to make the kingdom go. And in order for this person to do what they need to do, I have to do what I have to do, right? So the way that I like to explain this is that there are literally people who are stuck because they need what it is that you have. They can't move. That literally you're the missing piece. And while there are people who can do what you do, they can't do it like you do it. And while there are some people who have heard things being said that you provide, they've heard it over and over again, it's not until they hear it from you that it really clicks.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean by like, it's important. It's important because there are people waiting for you. Like there are people waiting for you.
That's good. And I think that's a point that I'm glad you brought up because we do the same thing. Right? Like similar. Like we do mostly the same thing. Like I'm a purpose coach. I have a purpose podcast. You will have this offer that she's keeping secret from us. And you also have a podcast, right? So, and they both talk about purpose, but our formats are totally different. The things we talk about are totally different, but they're both geared towards getting people to where they're going. So when you're operating your purpose, you have to remember that it isn't about you. Right? It's about getting your message out to the people who need to hear it. Because I listen to Pavielle's podcast when I need a boost. I'm like, let me just listen what Pavielle say today. Right? Because it helps encourage me on my journey. Whereas mine, you hear people's stories a lot more. So you get to identify with their stories. So it's the same thing, but totally different in the way it's presented. And I think I'm saying all this to say that your purpose probably is out there. Someone probably is doing it, but they're not doing it the way you're going to do it. And that's what makes it important that you go after it. Yeah. Okay, back to us. I always speak to my people, you know.
Yes. See, and even this, like even video.
Yeah.
Girl, you're not going to see me. I will show up on video in a way, but doing this is a whole production that you know you have been called to do. But this is your jam.
Yeah.
So.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, girl.
I'm trying. Anyway, back to this. So when people are in their purpose, right? So we're talking about like the video for me is new, right? This is a new development. You're coming out with the secretive thing, right? Whatever it is. Can you talk about development in your purpose? And I promise this is my last question.
Girl, you can ask how many questions you want to ask. Shoot, I'm having a good time. So what do you mean when you say development?
So like when you started as a newsletter, and now you're a podcaster, and now you're about to have the signature offer, and now so like, how does the development of your purpose contribute to your purpose? There we go. That's a better way to ask.
Okay, I think I'm following. So I go where I'm led.
Okay.
And because I don't ever want to be outside of the will of God.
Okay.
I'm only successful in this because I'm doing what God said to do. Literally, that's it. So it has developed over time into things that I'm less and less comfortable with, right? It's taking me more and more out of my comfort zone. But at the same time, I was prepared for it. So what I mean by that is, in 2019, I started leading a ministry at my church. And that was kind of my first step into leadership as an adult, because I've led things before as a child. But as an adult, it's a game changer because now I know too much.
Yeah.
Like I understand that you need to be able to inspire people on your team. You can't rule with an iron fist.
Right. Well,
girl, you have to be able to manage personalities. And I was in college, I cared nothing about that. The job had to get done.
Yes.
And so we're doing it.
We're very similar people. So just so you know, that's how I do.
It had to be done. With my sorority, nobody cared about feelings because we understood that things had to be done.
Right.
We were meant to help the people, and egos had to be taken out of it. But as an adult, I had to learn that that's not how to handle things when you're leading a team. So that was a way that God prepared me for that. Then on top of that, I do new member orientation for the new members at my church, which I didn't want to do either. But my pastor was like, they told me, she was like, girl, they told me that you want to be in the background handling the database and not talking to people, that you didn't want to talk to nobody. And I said, yes, that's what I told them. That's what I told the leaders of the ministry. Because I talk for a living. I don't want to have to, come here and do all of this talking. I want to operate in the backgrounds because I know what to do. Needless to say, I did both.
Right.
So I got familiar with talking in front of groups of strangers. And when I say strangers, I just mean people that I was meeting for the first time.
Right.
And child, how is that applicable to a podcast? I'm literally talking to people I have never met in countries that I've never been to. And I gotta be okay with that. So that has been a development of me. And then you've seen the development of me in my purpose, in the sense of like I started off with just a small intimate newsletter. Then I went to the podcast, and then who knows what's gonna come after that. But now I'm on your podcast.
Right.
You know, I'm talking on other people's shows, which I didn't even factor into the equation. That was never even on my mind. Here we are.
So your purpose has just developed as you so felt led, is what I'm hearing you say.
For sure.
Like as people invited you on, you weren't saying, no, I won't come to your podcast. You were just like, sure.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, my purpose is to help people in a nutshell with their purpose. I have a lot of words that can describe how to do that in terms of like strategizing, whatever. The end of the day is to help people with their purpose. So how I do that can change.
Right.
You know, like I can do that via coaching. I can do that via the podcast.
Right.
I can do that via a quick email to my newsletter.
Yeah, and I think that's important that you say that the vehicle can change, is what I tell people all the time. Like where you're going, the destination rarely changes. What comes up on the road will scare you, so you might have to change vehicles, but where you're going never changes when it comes to your purpose. So if your purpose is to help people find their purpose, that's what your purpose will be. Right. How you get there might change. Right. Because I answered all the questions, and my podcast comes out today, right now, so you can listen to it, whatever. Anyway, and it was interesting because that's one of my friend who interviewed me. That was one of the things he asked me, just like how my calling and my purpose are different. So I say as Christians, all our purpose is to tell people about Jesus. Like that's the purpose, right? But your calling is different, right? So mine is through purpose. I lead people to God through purpose, right? I know that, like that is what the Lord is showing me. But for some people, my pastor is preaching, you know? For some people, that's knocking on doors, right? So the vehicle may change, but the purpose is still the same. We are in this together to lead people, if you're a Christian, in that case to Jesus. But anyway.
I heard that clip. I can't wait to listen to the episode. I might listen to it on my ride.
Oh.
Yeah, I heard the clip and I was like, wait, is he asking her questions?
Yeah, he's asking me questions. And my last question always is, if people get nothing else from this podcast, what would you like for them to get?
The importance of purpose.
Okay.
I need people to understand how it just is, it's so beneficial for you as an individual, because some people are looking for, like, you'll notice that there are some people who will go from job to job, right? Or they'll move from city to city searching for something. Like they don't feel like they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, and they think that they can find that in a job, but really it's your work, it's your purpose that you find that in. And so that's the benefit to you as an individual. Like, you know that you have value, meaning, and you feel a sense of fulfillment. That's the importance of it for you. As it pertains to the kingdom, literally, lives will be changed and impacted for the better when you start working in your purpose. Like, say, for example, your purpose is to be an astronaut, right? And you are over here like, I don't know, fumbling. Whereas you could be the key to us finding some rare thing on another planet that cures cancer. Yeah. You know what I mean? We're stuck. There's so many people stuck until you go and make this discovery. Yeah. So that's what I mean by, I really want people to just understand how important it is.
So I know I said that was my last question, but now I have a follow-up question. So we know that finding our purpose is important, but what are some practical steps? So I've heard Pavielle and Jasmine for 35 odd minutes talk about how great it is they have their purpose, but I have no clue, right? So how, and I know it's important because Pavielle just told me, right? But again, like, what are some practical steps that I can take to discover my purpose?
I'm really glad you asked me that question, because at the root of purpose is where it comes from. Like, if there was a problem going on with your car, right? you would take it to, I mean, you might take it to your cousin, but who you should take it to is the manufacturer.
Right.
Because they created it, right?
Right.
They put it together, they know how this thing works and function and what it's supposed to do. And before you ever had it, they knew about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
With purpose, it's the same. In order for you to be able to really be on the path to discovering your purpose, you need to go to the manufacturer of it, which is God.
Mm-hmm.
And what I say by that is I don't want to be abstract. I don't want to make this feel like it's unattainable, because it really is. The base of it is you have to get an understanding of who God is and who you are in Christ. Like, what is your identity in Him?
Mm-hmm.
Because if you don't understand that God wants good for you and not evil, like some people really think that God be making them sick to punish them, and that's just not how this works at all. So like, don't even, you know, so I feel like in order for you to really understand purpose and discovering it, you have to understand who God is and who you are in God. And then from there, you have to be able to get a better understanding of how God communicates with you, and getting quiet to hear the voice of God. And when I say hear the voice of God, I'm not talking about the audible voice of God. I'm talking about, because He does speak audibly to some people. We know that. We've seen proof of it in the Bible. But today, we don't really see that often. We don't hear about it often. But what we do know is people have heard from God, and He has spoken to them. So for me, He speaks through His word, which is the same for you too. He's going to speak to you through His word, because that's His primary way of speaking to you. So you need to understand how to be able to recognize the voice of God. And there are books about it. Priscilla Shirer has written a book about how to understand and discern the voice of God. Joyce Meyer has done it too. Read these books, digest these materials, because it isn't something that's supposed to be reserved for certain people. God wants to communicate with you, and He does every day. You just don't hear Him.
Mm-hmm.
So that is by far the best advice that I can ever give, is to go to the manufacturer, go to God, because He's going to lead you down the path for sure to obtain and discover and figure out your purpose, like He did for me, and like He's done for the people who listen to Jazz's podcast. But you'll miss it if you don't know how to hear Him and listen.
Yeah.
So
there we go, y'all. So if you do not know your purpose, the first way is to learn who God is, and then to learn who you are in Him, according to Pavielle. So thank you for being here.
Yeah, this was fun.
This was a really good episode. I pray that everyone got something from this episode. And as usual, like, share, comment, and subscribe. And I'll see y'all next week. Bye. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Purpose Podcast with Dr. Jazz. I enjoyed my conversation with Pavielle about her journey from career to purpose, and I especially enjoyed her practical tips on finding your purpose. You can find out more about the Purpose Collective podcast by clicking the link in our show notes. And as always, don't forget to like, share, comment, or subscribe. We'll see you all next week.